everyone, and welcome back. So today I want to talk to you about a little organ in the body that's part of the digestive system that pretty much gets ignored most of the time, and that is the gallbladder. So we talk a lot about the liver, but the gallbladder is really important too. So the gallbladder is a small pear-shaped green organ on the right side of your abdomen, just beneath your liver. And it basically holds a digestive fluid called bile that is made in the liver, and then it's stored in the gallbladder when it's not being used. Now, bile, the fluid that the gallbladder holds and stores, is a kind of yellow-green, watery liquid that contains bile salts and bile pigments such as bilirubin, which is a breakdown product of hemoglobin, cholesterol, phospholipids, which is a type of fat, and our electrolytes. Bile salts themselves, they're made from cholesterol and phospholipids too, and they're a really important part of the digestive process. So these bile salts emulsify fat by physically breaking down large globules of fat that we eat into smaller ones so that they can then be broken down further chemically by fat digesting enzymes. Now, the liver makes the bile. And if we don't eat any food, then that bile is stored in the gallbladder. And while it's in the gallbladder, the water is removed and it becomes concentrated. The longer it's in the gallbladder, the more concentrated it can become. And then later, when fatty food is eaten, it travels down into the small intestine from the stomach. And then a hormone called cholecystokinin stimulates the contraction of the gallbladder, which then spurts out the stored bile into the small intestine. Now, gallstones can occur when the stored bile can become too concentrated because it's had all the water removed, and eventually, if it gets too concentrated, it crystallizes and forms those stones, and they can be incredibly painful. Now, if these block the entry points for the bile to enter the gallbladder or leave, then the bile accumulates and backs up into the liver, which can then damage the liver. Bile salts and the pigments can also end up in the bloodstream, which can damage tissues and cause jaundice when you kind of look really yellow. And then sometimes the bile salts can also accumulate under the skin, which can cause itching. So why is bile and the gallbladder so important to gut health? Well, we know that bile is important to our digestion of fats, but we also know from various studies that both gallbladder and bile are really important to our gut health and more. So the removal of the gallbladder, called a cholecystectomy, that's been shown to alter the way that bile flows into the intestine, and just by altering that can affect our gut bacteria. Now there's early studies on this, and we don't really know what it means, but there might be an associated risk of colon cancer with the change of this gut bacteria. Another study has shown that gallbladder diseases and dysfunction, including having to have your gallbladder removed or gallstones, also can increase your risk of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that's associated with lots of gut symptoms like chronic constipation and chronic diarrhea, or both, bloating, headaches, migraines, joint muscle pain, and quite a few different chronic diseases. The other thing that's really exciting is that bile acids might regulate gut immunity and inflammation. So there's been a few studies done on mice, not humans, that show that once bile acids have emulsified fats, they've done their digestive duty, they've then traveled down to the colon, where usually they would be removed eventually. Specific gut bacteria actually change them into immune regulating molecules. So these modified bile acids have been shown to activate two specific types of immune cells called T regulator cells and T helper cells. And these immune cells are actually responsible for modulating the immune response. So they'll either increase the immune response and inflammation or decrease it, whatever's needed by the body. So a healthy gallbladder that produces healthy bile can reduce the risk of inflammation of the gut lining, can reduce the risk of intestinal hyperpermeability, also known as leaky gut, and inflammation elsewhere in the body as a result, which I think is fascinating. Now, the other thing the gallbladder has is its own microbiome. So scientists have found that people with gallbladder disease have a very different group of bacteria than those with a healthy gallbladder, which suggests that somewhere along the line, the change of bacteria could be associated with an increased risk of disease. The role of the bacteria and the mechanism of that hasn't been determined yet, but it's showing once again that the bacteria in our body is hugely influential in whether we're healthy or we become sick. Intestinal permeability, leaky gut, has also shown that it can lead to the gut bacteria that usually stays in our gut because things pass through the gut lining that shouldn't. The gut bacteria moves into the bloodstream where it shouldn't be, which may cause an immune response. And that's been shown to lead to gallbladder inflammation, damage, and disease as well. And there's been quite a few studies to show that celiac disease and gluten intolerance can also drive gallbladder dysfunction and disease. So there's this huge kind of two-way pathway between the gallbladder creating gut problems and gut inflammation, and the gut itself actually influencing the health of the gallbladder. So they kind of work together. Now, some of the symptoms of gallstones, you would know if you had gallstones, but it's usually a severe sudden pain in the right upper abdomen. Possibly you can get it in the upper back as well. You might have a fever. You might be sweaty and shivery. You can be really nauseous. Sometimes you might vomit because the pain's so bad. You can look quite yellow and jaundiced. You may have very dark urine, or your poo might look kind of greeny or kind of whitey clay coloured as well. So if you have any of those symptoms, you must go to contact the doctor. You might even end up in the A&M. So don't ignore that. There's also something called gallbladder stasis, which is the step before gallstones occur. And it's when the bile becomes so concentrated, it doesn't crystallize, but it thickens, which means it doesn't spurt as well into the small intestine. This has been shown to be really common, or more common, in women over 40, women who've had children, and it can occur during pregnancy. And it's thought that it's really common in women because it's related to estrogen, because estrogen increases the secretion of cholesterol, and progesterone reduces bile acid secretion. So that means that the risk of gallstone formation is actually increased quite substantially. And also, if you take the oral contraceptive pill, then your risk will also increase. So symptoms of this stasis, biliary stasis it's called, would be bloating after meals. Now, there are lots and lots and lots of reasons why you might bloat after you've eaten a meal, and this is one of them. You might burp a lot after meals. You might, sometimes you can have a fish oil capsule, and you might burp like really fishy burps. Fatty foods can make you feel really nauseous and yuck. You might find that your poos float in the toilet. You might have chronic constipation. So you might even have chronic diarrhea. So, and all of those things can be symptoms for lots and lots of other things, but it's definitely worth just checking, if you have any of those symptoms, what exactly is going on. And the problem with biliary stasis or gallbladder stasis is if you can't secrete bile into the small intestine, if it's not going in properly, then you won't be digesting the fats that you eat. And that in itself can cause real problems. So, now, reducing healthy fats in your diet as a result of the biliary stasis, which you could be recommended, that can increase risks for brain, nervous system, and hormone balance. And our fat-soluble vitamins are vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin A, and vitamin K. And so if you're not absorbing those, that's going to create further health issues as well. What can also happen is that your liver doesn't function properly. It doesn't detoxify properly. So your hormones, cholesterol, toxins that we make inside, toxins that are outside of us, whether it's through our food or medicines or whatever, they can't be adequately detoxified and removed. That increases a toxic burden on our system, which then increases inflammation, and inflammation is a driver of chronic disease. So here are my tips for looking after the gallbladder. Number one, if you think you might have a problem with your gallbladder, go to your GP, talk to your GP and get assessed. Get tested. There are specific markers for your liver, these specific liver enzymes, ALT, AST, GGP, and ALP, that you can check to see if they're elevated, and also bilirubin. So go and see your GP. The other thing is you could change your diet. So there's heaps of research to show that diet will make a massive difference. You're not going to be surprised. You need to remove the processed food, the refined carbohydrates, basically the white stuff, the white flour and the white rice. Not that you don't have white rice now and again, but just you've got to really reduce it. Get rid of the crappy fats, the trans fats, the hydrogenated fats, and the highly processed vegetable oils. Like, they do nothing for us. Really sugar-dense food has been shown to actually make a difference. That can drive inflammation, and that's not good for the gallbladder. If you have a gluten sensitivity or a dairy sensitivity, get rid of them from your diet as well, and find other ways to get the nutrients that you get from gluten and dairy. I'm not an advocate for removing gluten and dairy if you don't need to and if you're not sensitive, but there is research to show that people that are sensitive, if they remove the foods they're sensitive to, in particular gluten and dairy, then that actually reduces the risk quite substantially of any kind of gallbladder dysfunction. Increase fiber-rich foods. So these are your grains and your legumes and your veggies. We need to have about 30 grams a day. That's the recommended amount to prevent chronic disease. Make sure you're eating plenty of veggies, 5 to 9 serves of veggies, 2 serves of fruit a day. Make sure you're eating a rainbow. Eat a good amount of healthy fats, avocado, olive oil, flaxseed oil, fish oils, nuts and seeds. They've also been shown to be really beneficial. Some of you will be very pleased about this, but coffee in particular has been shown to prevent the formation of gallstones, and a moderate amount of alcohol, 1 standard drink a day, may provide some protection too. Really important that if you have any gut inflammation, that you heal that gut. So have bone broths, look for specific foods or specific nutrients that have collagen, glutamine, zinc, sulforaphane in. Broccoli sprouts have sulforaphane in. You can consider herbs like hoheria, which is a New Zealand herb, marshmallow, slippery elm. They soothe the gut lining so it can start to heal. So go and see a naturopath or a herbalist for advice on specific herbs, because we need to make sure that they're safe for you. Eating bitter greens or herbs, especially before a meal, can also be really important because it can help to stimulate our bile. So try things like bitter greens, dandelion greens as well, bitter salads. You can try Swedish bitters or even bush bitters, which you can buy, or even a gin and tonic, which is an aperitif. And those aperitifs, those bitter drinks, they used to be drunk before meals in order for us to actually stimulate our all the different gastric juices, including bile. If you have any gallstones or you have a gallbladder condition, then don't try any herbs, don't try the bitters until you've spoken to a naturopath or GP, because that can actually make things worse. So this is only if you have a healthy gallbladder and you want to keep it healthy. Move your butt. So a lack of movement is associated with a higher risk of gallbladder disease. No surprise there whatsoever. Exercise is a massive preventative for pretty much most, or if not all, chronic disease. So find something that you love and start moving your body. Now, if you've got any questions about this, or if you want some extra help, there are lots of ways to get in touch with me. You can email me, you can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Facebook, and you can contact me on my email, sarahb@sarahbrenchley.naturopathy.com. So give me a shout, let me know what you've learned, let me know if you need any help, and I'll see you soon. Take care.